yourselves, relax, unwind. This is a safe space. I would imagine 99% of people here are neurodivergent. So if you need to get up, move around, fidget, do what you need to do. If you want to walk out at any moment, that's absolutely no problem. I was told I was being filmed and there were 2 chairs here, and I was like, yeah, I won't be sitting down. I pace, I fidget, I gesticulate, the kind of, you know. So just unmask, that's what it's all about. It's unapologetic, unmasking women, but I'll talk about neurodiversity as a whole, obviously, and the power of late diagnosis and what that looks like. So just a little bit about me, in case you're wondering who I am. I'm Hester Grainger, as Sarah so beautifully said. I'm a certified ADHD coach, neurodiversity cheerleader, as I like to call myself, and a neurodiversity consultant as well. I'm co-founder of Perfectly Autistic. With my husband at the back there, Kelly. We run Perfectly Autistic, so we're a neurodiversity consultancy. We do talks, we do training, we do workshops, webinars, workplace mediation, and neurodiversity coaching. We mainly work with large organisations. I'm super proud to be Red Bull Formula One's neurodiversity coach. We work with the NHS, Marks and Spencer's. I was going to say we, but I can't say that because you're here. I always say last year we trained 2,500 members of TUI staff. I trained about 100 or a couple of hundred. Kelly did the rest. I can't get away with anything now, can I, with him being here? So I was diagnosed with ADHD at 43, and I'll talk a little bit about that and my story in a bit. Last year I went on a UK-wide theatre tour. True ADHD, I got approached. Someone said, do you want to go on tour? Yeah, you create the show, whatever you want, but we'll organise it all. And I went, yeah. And I hadn't really thought about the logistics and what that might look like. And then in true ADHD style, I thought, I can do this myself. Right? Anyone else think, they're like, yeah, I can do that. So I'm going on tour later again this year that I'm now organising. Again, I'm like, why have I done this? Spoke at the House of Commons last year on neurodiversity, which I was super proud of. I'm also parents to 2 autistic and ADHD teens, which I'll talk more about a little bit in a minute. Wife to my autistic ADHD husband, Kelly. I do love trainers and I do love snacks. So I quite often worry more about what I'm going to wear than what I'm going to say, because when you've got ADHD, you kind of work out in that process, don't you, of the most important thing first. It isn't necessarily the talk or whatever you've got to do. It's actually the smaller bits that you can't, get over. So here's my story. I thought a little bit about me might be quite helpful, a bit of context. So this is my neurodivergent family. I've got Hudson, who you wouldn't actually know it, but he's only 14. He's 6 foot tall, and that's even more impressive because he's got ARFID, so he's got avoidance restrictive food intake disorder. Some people would say fussy eating. No, so much more than fussy eating. So it's even more impressive that somehow my boy, who survives on nothing but Dairy sandwiches and Nutella sandwiches, genuinely nothing else other than that, and Jaffa cakes, somehow has grown to be 6 foot tall. Quite frankly, as India always says, we need a study on him. Someone needs to know, how has this happened? What is in Dairy and Nutella to grow a giant? I've got India, who's 16, doing her GCSEs. Anyone else got GCSEs? It's tough out there, isn't it? It's hard work. We're getting there. So she's doing her GCSEs this year. And as I said, I've got Kelly. And I think having a neurodivergent family is really challenging, but I think for a lot of people, that is how they realise they're neurodivergent themselves. Can I have a little whoop or a little hands up if you realise, look at this, I don't even need to say it. What am I going to say? You realise you were a neurodivergent because of your children. Yeah? A lot of us are here because of that. So I'll explain more about our journey in a minute and sort of how that came about. But the children were diagnosed autistic at 7 and 9. Again, partly because of Hudson's eating, or lack of eating, shall we say. It was raised a few times, maybe Hudson's autistic, and then within a second, it was almost, but he can't be. He's affectionate. He makes eye contact. He's so snuggly. He's a great communicator. It's like, okay. So we didn't really think much of it. Then we got to 7. He got to 7 and kind of we realised that there were autistic traits. I thought it was super cute. He would wear a 3-piece suit the whole time. People would be like, are you off to a wedding? And he'd be like, no, I'm going to the park. Like it was, and then I'd be looking like a bag of spanners behind him in a tracksuit, being like, no, he dresses like this. So we sort of just noticed, certain things. Then during his assessment, the psychologist was like, oh, so, does he do this? Does he do that? And I was like, he does that. but he doesn't do that. He does that, but he doesn't do that. And I very quickly realised India was also autistic. Often you get neurodivergent families, it often goes hand in hand. So being a girl, it was harder to see. School, absolutely nothing. Can't see a thing. I'm sure lots of you may well have had this as women yourselves, and also for your children. So India was actually diagnosed about 6 months later after Hudson, but it was tougher to get her diagnosed. Then during the assessment, Kelly was away with work a lot, very senior job in a corporate career. He'd often be abroad, so I'd WhatsApp him information about Hudson, and he'd reply, "Was that me or is that HUD? Because that's how I feel and that's how I think, and this is what's going on in my mind." So Kelly was diagnosed at 44. Then we had lockdown. Fun. As a family, actually, we quite liked it, but we were like, oh, okay, this is quite nice. We don't have to leave the house now. So during that, we were homeschooling, obviously, like everybody else was, and we just realised that Hudson's processing wasn't quite there. They are both super bright, super intelligent. You would think fairly low needs. And we just noticed, I remember Kelly was doing maths, because I've got dyscalculia, so I'm not allowed to touch maths homework at all. I've got 3 Ds for my GCSE, managed to fail it 3 times, which is quite impressive. And I remember Kelly saying, "Oh, Hudson, so, what's the answer?" And Hudson sort of went, "Huh?" And we were like, we just noticed that the processing wasn't there. And what you'll find is if you're autistic, the ADHD overlap is about 70%. If you're autistic, you've also got ADHD. The overlap is huge. So they were diagnosed, the children were diagnosed as ADHD. Kelly then was like, hold on, this sounds familiar. I also have those struggles as well and those challenges. And then during their assessment, it was on Zoom, and I remember the psychologist said to me, "So you've got ADHD?" And I'm like, "No, what do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about." And she was like, "Are you not assessed? Have you not been diagnosed?" And I was like, "No." And for me, I had no idea that I had ADHD, and I know that's very different maybe from a lot of you here, but I'll talk more about that in a minute. I kind of think about my life in 2 parts. Now, I didn't realise how big the screen was, and my God, there's a lot of eyebrows or lack of going on there. So my career started out, can I just say, youngest member ever of an audience. This is very impressive and so quiet. Hello. Easily distracted, apologies. So I started out working in TV. So my very first job was working on the Wright stuff, funnily enough, down the road at Anglia Television, and I absolutely loved it. I didn't know I had ADHD, but I sought out a career that could not have been more dopamine seeking. It was on air, live, every day, on Channel 5. My brain is like ding, 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 ding. It's one like the ADHD jackpot, okay? It's super exciting. I absolutely loved it. Got to go to award ceremonies and harass people like Ricky Gervais. Yes, we have that hideous picture in our toilet. My daughter is like, "Oh my God, it looks like you slept from the man from The Office." And I was like, "Yes, no, we're not a couple." As you can tell, he's really pleased to see me because my friend Jackie had a boyfriend called Ricky, and I was a little bit drunk. Didn't know I had ADHD, so often drank too much. And then was like, "Oh, my friend Jackie's got a boyfriend called Ricky." And he's like, "Great." Like, what? Who cares, right? So I kind of feel like my life before knowing I had ADHD was super fun, super great. I didn't know. And then we kind of have part 2, what my life looked like. So after I was diagnosed, it kind of all made sense. So Kelly shared with his boss that he was autistic. And when he did, his boss laughed and said, "We don't look autistic." Okay. And then he said, little ears, I hope we don't understand yet, "I just thought you had to stick up your ass." So Kelly then realised, actually, if this is my experience, maybe this is other people's. And we reached out and we started to form a community, and that's where Perfectly Autistic was born from, because we thought, if this is Kelly's experience in the workplace, are other people going to have had the same experience as well? So my background was PR and marketing, and I'd done that for sort of 20 years, but lots of different jobs and things within that, which I'll talk more about in a bit. But almost after ADHD, it feels like quite different, but in a really good way, because I understand myself. I know, who I am and what I'm doing. And because of my background in PR, I make us do stupid stuff like go on the front of Disability Review magazine, and I went on ADHD Chat, and I've just realised I've gone wrong. I said I'm not going to wear the green dress because I've already got a photo of that. And then look at this. This was from like 2 weeks ago. I'm back on ADHD Chatter. It's not live yet, and I don't actually know if I meant to say, but the clip of me in the green dress, those clips ended up going viral, and they were viewed 20 million times, right? And I thought, oh, okay, I'll tell my children. And they went, we know, we've seen you on my TikTok For You page. And I was like, yeah, it's gone viral. And they were like, how many views? It's like about 20 million. Yeah, that's viral. For teenagers, that's quite a compliment. But we've done loads since I was diagnosed with ADHD, and it all makes so much sense. And I think having ADHD, I'm just ADHD as my family call me, I'm not neurodivergent, but a lot of you I am neurodivergent, but I'm not ADHD, but a lot of you in here may well be. So I kind of don't have the autistic side of my brain going, you can't do that, you can't do that. My ADHD brain is like, yeah, you can do that. Just say yes and worry about all the details later. And that doesn't always go to plan, but I've always wanted to be on the radio and ended up with my own radio show. But I wanted that since I was 7. So it's funny how sometimes with ADHD, you can wait a really, really long time for things and eventually kind of it will happen. So I thought I'd share some ADHD traits that I had that I didn't know was my ADHD. Right, now I feel some of you may well relate to these. My hobby graveyard. Who has a hobby graveyard? Yes. We haven't got time now, but as part of my show last year, I made people shout out what was in their hobby graveyard. Quite frankly, it was epic. I also then did a whole conversation about the middle of Lidl. We've not got time for that today, okay? Just telling you. My hobby graveyard is, quite frankly, epic. There's a big sewing machine that actually India got out the other day, and it hadn't seen the light of day for maybe 15 years. It came with a DVD manual. That's how old it is. But then I forgot about the big sewing machine and I bought a mini one. Never used that. That was middle of Lidl. Lots and lots in my hobby graveyard. 30 different full-time jobs. Never been fired from any of them, just got bored. And I thought it was my media career. It was, I worked on the Wright stuff, I worked on Today with Des and Mel, I worked on Loose Women. You moved jobs and contracts quite quickly, so I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't realise it was my ADHD being like, move, you're bored. Moving house more times than I can remember. Anyone else? Serial mover. This is the 3rd time we've lived in Norwich. We moved back 18 months ago. I'm not even from here. Okay, I'm actually from Ipswich, but I do try and keep that quiet. I met my lovely husband, Kelly, and 3 weeks into our relationship. To be fair, I have to explain, I had known him from before, from years ago, but I hadn't seen him for about 5 years. We got together, 3 weeks later, he said, do you want to go to Australia? I'm like, yeah, go on then. 3 months later, we were in Australia, right? If India did that, I'd go mad. If Hudson did that, I'd go mad. But we didn't know we were neurodivergent, so we just kind of spark each other off, interrupting and finishing other people's sentences. Missed the apostrophe there, just for any of you grammar people out there, I've just spotted that. Making small errors, even though you've checked something 1,000 times. Anyone else? And not being able to walk slowly. Anyone else? It's actually horrendous. You're behind someone, you're like, oh my God. So, we then also bought a flat. It's not as bougie as it sounds. We had a 100% mortgage, but we did go to Reading for lunch for the day from London and bought a flat because we didn't know we had ADHD. So these are some of the traits that I didn't know. So you're probably going to have different traits, but a lot of these you might relate to. So being late diagnosed, I want to talk about that. This isn't just me sharing random stories about my life, okay? So being late diagnosed, co-conditions and misdiagnosis. I didn't know I had ADHD, okay? But so many women don't know they have ADHD, but they are misdiagnosed with borderline personality disorder, maybe anxiety, maybe depression, maybe bipolar, okay? And then what happens is they reach maybe kind of late 30s, 40s, hit the perimenopause. That's fun, Godspeed, who anyone's going through that. My God, it's hard work. I don't even know what to say to it. It's a lot. And this is when people start to realise their neurodivergent traits are coming out, because before maybe you masked a lot, you could get away with things, I always sort of say, as in you could manage to maybe cope and hide how you were feeling. But so many women are misdiagnosed, and what you'll find is neurodivergent conditions often go hand in hand. I've already shared my stat, haven't I? 70% of individuals who are autistic also have ADHD. Very rarely, I'm an ADHD coach, a neurodiversity coach, don't actually think there's anyone I've coached that probably is just ADHD, okay? The overlap is huge. Someone maybe is dyslexic and ADHD, or someone's autistic and ADHD. The overlap with conditions there's a lot. And that's why the term ADHD is being used more. Have you all heard of the term? The autism, the AU from autism, the DHD from ADHD. And this is when you have the two brains almost fighting. Like I said, I'm not autistic ADHD, but my husband describes it as two brains fighting against each other, because the autism wants order and you want to be on time and you want structure, and then the ADHD is like, nah, don't worry about it. Come on, this will be fun, let's go. And then the autistic brain's like, yeah, no, actually. So it can be really hard work. Yes, really hard work. So what are some of the barriers to being diagnosed as an adult when it comes to being neurodivergent? Waiting times. Okay, the waiting times can be huge. I know a lot of counties, their books for Right to Choose, for example, or diagnosis, it's actually closed. So you can't actually get a diagnosis on the NHS, which is outrageous. We were doing a talk the other day, I was doing a talk yesterday for NFU Mutual. They're based in Warwickshire and their books are just closed. The doctors are just like, no, we won't diagnose anyone else. Like I said, waiting time, oh no, I've done it wrong. Waiting times, really long. Cost, often prohibitive, can be a lot of money. If anyone is seeking a diagnosis for themselves or their children, I would recommend seeking a dual assessment, okay? So both autism and ADHD. We'd have saved a bit of money if I'd have done that, but you quite often just think it's one. So, oh, I'm going to go for an autism assessment or an ADHD assessment, and actually, quite often, you are both. I always say ADHD is your gateway drug, okay? People can handle an ADHD diagnosis. Oh, I'm ADHD, isn't it fun and kooky? It's so much fun. I just lose my keys 1,000 times a day, like no biggie. Autism, if I'm like, oh, I think you might be autistic, people are like, oh, well, okay. People really struggle with that, because I think depending how old you are, your reference point for autism is Rain Man. Now, being very specific, they didn't even mention autism, they talked about savant syndrome, okay? So that's your kind of, can you sketch St Paul's Cathedral without having been? Can you sit down at the piano and play beautiful music? I'd say more modern reference points now for sort of savant syndrome and things like that, or autism, super duper brainy people. The Good Doctor, anyone seen that? It's really good. Young Sheldon, Big Bang Theory. But actually, that's not what a lot of people are like. I heard my son Hudson the other day gaming with his mates, as he does a lot, but that's fine. And he went, I'm just that normal autistic boy. And I thought, I love that. And what he meant was, I can't play the piano and I can't sketch St Paul's Cathedral, and I think there are a lot of people that think, well, I can't be autistic because actually I haven't got these amazing, I hate the word superpower. Apologies if anyone loves it. Absolutely hate the word superpower, but I haven't got these amazing superpowers. Actually, I think so many people, when you talk about the superpower narrative, wasn't even going to discuss this, but now I'm on my high horse. I think that often comes from the media, where people go, oh, children, if you want to say your children have superpowers and they love it, that's great. I was saying to my son, I was talking to him about it, he is 14, and he went, well, I haven't got telekinesis, have I? I can't time travel, I can't disappear. Because he's autistic, he takes it literally. If your children are younger and they love the superpower narrative, obviously crack on, you do you, okay? Do whatever works. But I think the superpower narrative can be quite damaging, and you can end up with a lot of people that just go, well, I didn't get that as part of my, autism assessment or my ADHD. Where's my superpower? My superpower is shopping, okay? Quite frankly, I'm very good at shopping, and I would say probably India's is spending our money. Would you agree? So she's pretty good at that. People say, well, what are your children's superpowers? And I'm like, they're really sarcastic and they're very funny. Like, I don't know what to say. People are unsure what benefit it will bring. Well, if I go for a diagnosis, I'm 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 in a lot of cases. Why does it matter? Why should I? What's it going to bring? It's going to cost me all this money. I may have waited all these years. If I go on the NHS, what am I going to do? For me, I will share, understanding myself and being kind to myself is huge, right? And I feel like you can't put a price on that. The fact I know that after 4 o'clock, my batteries are pretty much dead. Like, I am like this from the minute I wake up, okay? I am high word count, I'm high energy. So I can't last too late into the night, except when I'm doing a Norfolk Women ADHD meetup, which I'll talk about in a bit. But actually, my batteries are just, I can't keep this up the whole time. So for me, it's about being kind to myself, or it's about understanding why I find adulting really hard, why I find it really hard to keep on top of the house, and the house is quite neat, and then it will go bam, and then I'm like, where did that come from? I thought I had it all in order. And then there can be the stigma or the fear of disclosing, maybe either in the workplace or with family members. You might tell a family member that you think you're neurodivergent, and they're like, oh, seen it on TikTok, have you? I told my mum I had ADHD, and she went, there is nothing wrong with you, you're perfectly normal. And I went, I know, I'm perfectly normal, I happen to have ADHD, there's nothing wrong with you. And then we've been on this journey, and then she came to one of my shows. I was at Lowestoft last year, and she rang me up the next day. This is Ray, my mum. I think I'm neurodivergent. She's 80, so I'm being kind. But I'm like, where do you think I got it from? Where do you think we just talk over each other, and we talk off on tangents, and we share 1,000 stories? And why do you think you've had to write to-do lists where it says post letter, otherwise you'll forget to post the letter? There's no judgment, but she's like, I'm so organised, I can't have ADHD. And now she's on this journey, so that's quite interesting. So that's the trouble as well. You can often not upset family members, but what then can happen is then family members start to go, oh, or you can feel quite dismissed with that. So that can be a bit of an issue. Let me move along. So why are so many women going undiagnosed, okay? Well, the diagnostic criteria was developed for boys, basically, right? Even now, when it comes to an autism assessment, the diagnostic criteria, you still get a bag. I don't know if anyone has had an autism diagnosis in here. You get a bag of little toys, and it might be a feather and a frog and a this, and you're expected to make up a story about the frog and about the... Yeah. I'm going to out you. If you're anything like my husband, you just go, I'm not doing that. I'm not making up a story about a frog and a leaf and a feather. But that's what they set up for boys, mainly. Obviously, it would suit girls as well, but to show their imagination. And if you're autistic, apparently you haven't got such great imagination, so you can't come up with an elaborate story about a toy frog and a leaf and a feather. It's ridiculous, right? Girls are often better at masking. I don't always agree with that, because I have the king and the prince of masking at home. And when Hudson was diagnosed, they said he presents like a girl, as in he masks so much. He kind of game face at school. He would not, someone tells you to sit still because he's autistic, he would sit still and then he wouldn't move until he felt like screaming. Symptoms can look different in women, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. Difficulties are often mislabeled. I've mentioned that already, about the misdiagnosis, etc. So we'll go on to that and talk more about that. So what is some of the impact of being late diagnosed? And I'm going to get some water before I forget to drink. Does anyone know about introception? You only know you need to drink until you're like, oh, why am I so thirsty? Yesterday I was like, I don't know why I feel so faint. Oh, all I've had all day is a bag of hula hoops. That might be why. Excellent. So the impact of late diagnosis, okay? We've got the internalised shame or the guilt, right? Some of you may well have felt that. Maybe you felt different and you didn't know why. And you're like, why can everyone else handle it? Why can everyone else see what's going on? Why can everyone else cope? And I feel like I can't. Late diagnosis can bring relief. Like I said, it can also bring grief as well. That if I'd have known, if I'd have had support like the grief and anger, processing years of misunderstanding, if I'd have known at school, maybe I would have had more support. If I'd have known, I get this sometimes when I coach people, it's not always men, but they're quite often like, and I wouldn't have married the person I've married. And I'm always like, oh, this is awkward. Obviously, I'm not there to judge at all, but genuinely, they're like, I would have made very different decisions in life. Like I said, it can bring relief, and I have to say I don't know anyone that's regretted getting that, but you need to be aware that there can be this grief of this life that you may feel like you've missed out on. And that's what I do my neurodiversity coaching is about going, yeah, that's a lot. I'm not a counsellor, I'm not a therapist, so I don't go back over the past. You go, right, who are you now? Yeah, who are you now? That's right. Who are you now? What do you want to be? What do you stand for? What do you love in life? What fills you with joy? All those things that maybe you've forgotten. And actually, what does it look like to me? Now I understand myself better. Who am I and what can I be? Imposter syndrome. I can't have ADHD, I sit still. Clearly, that was not me, obviously. Or I'm not autistic enough. Maybe that's how it feels, is that actually, well, I'm not autistic enough because I haven't got a superpower. I can't sketch St Paul's Cathedral or whatever. Masking for so long, did I fake the assessment? Anyway, yeah, maybe I tricked them. They're quite clever, the psychologists and psychiatrists, they can tell. But isn't that interesting that even afterwards we're judging ourselves going, well, am I really autistic? Am I not? Maybe they just were feeling generous that day and just gave me a yes because they felt bad, like who knows. And then it's common to feel angry at past teachers, employers, family members, whoever. That's really common, this grief and this anger. And that's often something that's not really talked about massively. So this can be the impact of late diagnosis. When I say late diagnosis, I do also mean the epiphany moment. You don't have to seek a diagnosis if you don't want to. Self-diagnosis is valid. I do caveat this with, I said that weirdly, I do caveat that with, if you're ADHD, the chances are you've hyperfocused, you've read every book on it, you've watched every podcast, you've gone down every rabbit hole, versus someone that on TikTok has seen it on TikTok, oh, I lose my keys, I must be ADHD. No, that's not how it works, okay? But I do think if you are the person who is like, I will attend every event going, I will read every book, I will, look at every meme, oh my goodness, then, and the same with autism, self-diagnosis is valid because of the waiting times, because of how expensive it is, etc. Actually, for some people, they just go, do you know what? I know I'm neurodivergent, and that's absolutely okay. But you can then have that feeling of, my goodness me, this is a bit rappy. And actually, I wish I'd have known. So now what? You might be going, oh my God, this is depressing. But now what? Okay, can be life-changing. Like I said, like for me, genuinely, and I think us as a family, knowing what we know now is amazing. I'll be really honest, for quite a while, my son was like, I wish I wasn't autistic. I wish this wasn't so challenging. But actually, it makes us understand him, India, and as a family as a whole, it makes us understand each other a lot better, which is really important. You don't have to wait for a diagnosis to put things into place, okay? This is really key. If you're on the waiting list or if your children are on the waiting list, start treating yourself with kindness. Start parenting them in a neurodivergent way, okay? You don't have to wait for the diagnosis to put these things in support, because in some instances, you're going to be waiting a really, really long time. Navigate support systems. Find out what works for you. Is it that you need a reminder to eat lunch every day because otherwise you're just surviving on hula hoops? What is it? Put yourself first. How many years have we been people pleasing? How many years have we been putting other people first and not ourselves? And this is what I do, as I say, with my coaching. Right, what do you want? What do you stand for? Put yourself first, okay? Find your tribe. Find your people. Find the people that connect. I run Norfolk Women with ADHD. Anyone here from Norfolk? Can we have a whoop, please? Thank you. That sounds much better. You do sound a bit like owls, but it's quite cute. Woohoo, woohoo. I'll share more about that in a minute, but it's finding your tribe. It's connecting with people. It's understanding that actually it's okay to be yourself and unmask with other people. Like I said, find your tribe. And actually what you may find as well is your friends around you already are neurodivergent. Or maybe you find friendships really tricky. So many of us find friendships really tricky and no one talks about it. Nobody talks about it. That's why I set up Norfolk Women with ADHD, because I moved to Norfolk and I didn't know anyone. So we moved 18 months ago and I thought, how can I make friends? This is so ADHD. I can set up a Facebook group and I can make some friends, right? This is it. We've now got 2,000 members. It's kind of, but doesn't that show, A, how neurodivergent Norfolk is? Love it. You're like, yes, it is. Don't know the stats, but it is, isn't it? Yeah. So yeah, it's connecting with your people. Maybe your partner is, maybe your kids. It's finding your people and the people that you don't have to mask and that just get you. So, overthinking and perfectionism. Don't we love it? Right. Many women grew up, maybe you were called chatty, maybe you were daydreaming, maybe you were disorganised, maybe you were sensitive. Didn't look like you had ADHD, okay? Actually, you may have been all of those things. I was obviously very chatty. My mum said I started to talk at 18 months and never, ever stopped. And then I saw a meme the other day on Instagram and it said, if it said, you talk too much on your school report, what do you do now for a job? I literally talk too much for my job. Like, I'm a keynote speaker. This is what I do. Someone's not happy about having to leave, are they? He's like, no, come back. Girls often mask from a really young age, okay? It can often be, fitting in, conforming, even when they're really overwhelmed. And this is what happens is then women grow up and then this is why it can then feel a lot. Also, I do want to share, if your children are neurodivergent, if your children have got ADHD, by the time they are 12, they will have received 20,000 more negative comments than their peers, their siblings, their friends. 20,000. So if you're parenting neurodivergent children, if you are, grandparents, teachers, whatever that looks like, you need to negate that negativity. So we thank our children for putting things in the dishwasher. Of course they should put things in the dishwasher, they're 14 and 16. We're like, thank you so much, they really appreciate that. Thank you so much for asking if anyone wants a glass of water. That's really lovely of you. We are desperately trying to negate these 20,000 negative comments, because these children who've had the 20,000 negative comments of sit still, stop fidgeting, you're too much, you're not enough, why are you shy, all of these things, then grow up to be adults, and we wonder why. Maybe we lack confidence. I mean, that's not me, I'm quite confident, but we lack these feelings. We go, oh my goodness me, maybe I was told I was too much, I was too loud, I spoke too much, and all of these things. So you need to combat that. I have to say that for, if you've got neurodivergent children in your life, praise them. Try not to say you're too much or you talk too much, or that, really affirm them, because I think that's really important. ADHD in women is more likely to show up as anxiety, overthinking, procrastination or burnout, often not hyperactivity. Obviously that's not always the case, and I haven't explained exactly about ADHD. I'll really briefly explain. ADHD's got 3 different types: attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's not that we have a deficit of attention, it's just we don't know where to focus it, okay? We just don't know where, and we work things out in like I think linear is the word I always get in a muddle, fashion. So we kind of sequentially have to work through things. So I knew Neurodiversity Celebration Week was coming up, but we've had a really busy couple of weeks leading up to it. So I couldn't think about the talks until they were literally the next thing coming up. I can't plan ahead too much, but now I know why, so it all makes sense, okay? Hyperactive, so then you've got inattentive, which is away with the fairies, daydreaming in another world. Hyperactive, which is obviously very external quite often, but also it can be that your mind is like a motor. So you can be hyperactive, but internally where it doesn't stop, and then you can be combined, okay? And to be diagnosed with ADHD, you have to have had the traits before you were 12. It's really key. So you can't just develop it in, later in life. You have to have the traits from before you're 12, and you have to have scored 6 out of 9 in inattentive or 6 out of 9 in hyperactivity. I scored 8 out of 9 in inattentive, 9 out of 9 in hyperactivity. It is the only test I've ever smashed. Hormones play a big role as well, perimenopause or a pregnancy, puberty, and I think it's really important if you've got teenagers in your life or kind of heading up. We're really open with both children, but Hudson as well, he knows all about the perimenopause. He may well wish he doesn't. But he has gone through puberty, so I'm like, you're at that end, I'm at this end, and that's also why it can be quite a lot, especially if you've had your children a little bit later in life. They're teenagers and going through puberty, and you're going through the perimenopause, and then one of you realise you're ADHD or neurodivergent, or you all realise, and that can be a lot. So be kind to yourself, okay? When it comes to hormones, it can be a lot, can't it? So I think that needs to be mentioned. We can feel like we're constantly juggling, feel like we've dropped a ball somewhere, okay? Maybe we're forgetting the small things, but we're remembering every single mistake we've done, okay? Overcompensating while quietly burning out behind the scenes, right? This can look like anxiety, exhaustion, imposter syndrome, and sometimes it can be a complete crash before you're diagnosed or you receive support, and that's almost what it takes for you to go, oh my goodness me, this is what's going on. It's not just, life. So masking and burnout, what it can look like. So it's basically when people hide or change their natural behaviour, okay? Can feel like you're acting, but the performance is absolutely draining, okay? So you might be looking at body language, looking at facial expressions, thinking about the tone of voice, often very subconscious. You don't even know you're doing it, but especially if you're autistic, you are watching what people are doing, you're taking it in. Have I said too much? Did I make too much eye contact? Did I make not enough? Did I stare too intently? Did I fit in, etc.? Try not to talk too much. This is how my masking shows up. Try not to laugh too loudly, like the 30 different jobs. I've worked for a lot of different companies, and I'm aware I'm quite a lot. So when I would join a company, I would try to be a bit less. So I wouldn't laugh as loudly, it's quite loud. I would try not to interrupt people. I would have to kind of hold myself back, because that's what it looks like for me. Maybe practicing conversations to avoid awkwardness. you then think about every different scenario going. Okay, you're like, well, if I say this and then they say that and then they come back with this, that may well resonate with some of you. So this is masking, and this then can cause burnout. I would say neurodivergent burnout is very different from general burnout, and I feel the word burnout is bandied around a lot, and I think people mean they're really exhausted. Oh God, I think I'm in burnout. If you were in burnout, a good sleep on a Saturday and a lie-in would not cure you, save you, fix you, whatever, okay? Burnout can be a lot. Basically what it looks like, that you're emotionally drained, maybe you're feeling completely detached from things, very numb, maybe you're feeling really disconnected from others, you know, loved ones, friends, family. You can feel physically uncomfortable in environments that normally you felt okay in, right? Chronic fatigue even after resting. Burnout isn't something that just gets fixed magically with a weekend off. The amount of people I coach, especially at Red Bull, and they're like, so I've got burnout, so I took Friday off. I'm like, okay. Or maybe they get signed off work for a couple of weeks. It's a really long journey, okay? It's much longer than that. So do be aware and do be kind to yourself if you are going through burnout. So what you can do, because I think that's really important, start to recognise signs when you're heading to burnout. Now, this might sound slightly counterintuitive because once you're in burnout, you may not have realised you were heading there, okay? So what I would do is I would let other people know when you're out of burnout, let other people know, do you know what, actually, I think when I'm heading to burnout, I have these feelings, or this is what it looks like to me. I was coaching someone and she was saying her colleagues realised she's going into burnout sooner than she is. And she said it started with a packet of biscuits that she was eating for lunch. And no shade if you want to eat a packet of biscuits, but she used to eat normally really healthily and she couldn't. All of a sudden, obviously that just felt too much executive function, etc. Then she felt like, you know, she wasn't taking care of herself so much from a self-care perspective. Normally she'd wear makeup and always make an effort with clothes and hair. So her colleagues could see these things, but she couldn't because she was in it. So let loved ones know, colleagues, family members, whatever, this is what me heading to burnout can look like. Remember, as my teenager likes to tell me, no is a full sentence. It is. Often caveat that with, that sounds great, but no, I can't do it. But you don't need to justify it, okay? Be like the, well, I was going to say, but like be like the royal family. This has not lasted well, has it? Never complain. Don't be like the royal family. Never complain, never explain. That's what they say. Don't know if that's, again, that's really not landing. But no is a full sentence. I think that's really important. You don't have to be all things to all people. I think we can so often, especially women, we're, you know, friends, mums, daughters, sisters, colleagues, bosses, whatever this could look like. We don't have to be all things to all people, okay? In the words of Mel Robbins, let them. Have you, anyone heard of Mel Robbins and Let Them?
Halfway through.
Okay, it's so good. You don't even need to read the book. You just need to, there's literally, she's got podcasts, she's got clips on Instagram. Basically, it's let them behave like that, let them do that. The flip side, the bit of the book you have to get to, is the, but let me. So let me choose how to respond to that. Let me do this. So have a little Google if you don't know Mel Robbins already.
I actually got a tattoo recently on my arm.
Okay, this is amazing.
I was going to get that as well. It's just been so
That's like
much.
my favourite one.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yes. So let them. You just like that? Yeah, let them. Like, love it.
I'm just getting a bit carried away though. I'm just like writing words over myself.
Like, is that like a to-do list? I love it. It's just there we go. So just before we end and we've got questions, I hope beautiful things happen to you, and when they do, I hope you realise you are worthy of every single one of them. Okay, that's my little reminder. So anyone wants to take a photo? Norfolk Women with ADHD, come and join. You're all in Norfolk, hence why you're here. It's a free Facebook community. We have events. We've got an event next Thursday talking about masking and burnout more. It's not clicky at all, I have to say that. So many people are like, oh God, I don't know anyone. Yeah, so it's not clicky. It's okay. You'll be fine. Small people aren't allowed, unfortunately. But yeah, come and join. It's Facebook community, super supportive, really lovely. Little shameless plug for tomorrow morning there. Online, Kelly and I are going to be doing a session, late diagnosis now, what? Understanding your neurodivergent brain. It's for men and women, autism, ADHD, little bit of a shameless plug there, and do get in touch. I'm also going on tour later this year again, like I said, and the tickets aren't on sale yet, but I'm going to Madder Market Theatre. So I'm very excited. I'm also going to DIS. Didn't know it's big enough to have a theatre, but apparently it's got the cornhole. So I'm off to Dis as well and other places as well. But do come along. It's called ADHD Unfiltered. We are, unfiltered. Perfectlyautistic.co.uk. We've got loads of free blogs, free resources, etc. If anyone wants neurodiversity training, neurodiversity coaching, access to work coaching, we've got a blog on there about that as well. I can explain all about that, and I coach a lot of people who've got access to work. Come and follow me on Instagram, Hester's Vibe. I'm also on LinkedIn as well. Thank you. Any questions? We're 2 minutes over. We're not really. It's 12:17, but I do like to be prompt. Any questions? Thank you.